Regarding our Coach Jackson, we're ecstatic to have him back. And normally he takes more time to make the decision, but I think he recognized that with free agency and some of our assistant coaches up for other jobs, people needed to know what his future was. So he took some early time to get medical evaluations that might normally take another week or two, and he was comfortable. And I've had dialogue with him for now 3 or 4 days. I always felt good about it, but he never committed. So to get a phone call, was it yesterday? Well, actually, we did the release yesterday. So what's today? Today is Friday. So to get a phone call on Wednesday night from him, it was not completely out of the blue, but certainly, it felt good to know that he's coming back, and that's, for the organization, it's a huge plus. And in terms of stability, looking for another coach, looking for assistants, at a very important time of the year, it's comforting to know that's something we don't have to do.
When you got the phone call and it was that soon, did you get nervous at first before he started telling you what he was going to do?
No, like I said, I've had dialogue with him before he left, and once or twice, in Montana, talking about assistant coaches, giving updates on our players, prospective players, the assistant coaches, Brian Shaw, with the Cleveland opportunity. I always felt as if he was engaged, because you could tell if someone's really, not going to come back, that they're really not engaged in, future decisions for an organization. So I felt as if he was engaged, and I always felt good about, where we were. But, my opinion was, most of his decision hinged on medical evaluation. So if he got a phone call from a doctor, no matter how our conversations were going, it could have done a 180 pretty quick.
You seemed pretty confident when you talked to us that this is ultimately the way it would turn out anyway.
He seemed?
You seemed.
You did.
Yeah, well, I felt all along that this is an opportunity that coaches love to have. That this is a team that can continue to compete at a high level, for several years. I don't think Phil's looking at it that way. I think, like most coaches, they look towards next year. And most coaches go game to game, but the season's over. So what they do is they look at next year. That's as far in advance as they can go. And I think he's obviously comfortable with the team. He's got a great, I think, relationship with the organization. We all work well together. His staff is intact. There won't be many major changes to the team. So I'm not that surprised that this is, what his decision has been.
Do you have a time frame that you expect to be able to reach a contract with him?
I don't anticipate any problems. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's done within a week. Sooner.
It's one of those situations where if he's going to come back, everybody's sort of on the same page to begin with, or else you wouldn't make that happen.
Yeah, we've had some dialogue with his representative today. I don't see any problems. There always could be a problem until you get a signature, but I don't anticipate problems. The organization, and Phil and his representatives, it's always been very amicable, and we've always been able to work things out.
Is this definitely going to be his last season?
It's a question for him. It sounds as if that's what he's decided. But I'm happy to have him back this year, and maybe a year from now we're going through the same type of a decision-making process. It doesn't sound that way. It sounds like he's made his mind up, but that's something to discuss down the road.
Is it easier for you guys if you do have an indication that this will be his last year in terms of trying to set up all those things you talked about in terms of coaching changes and assistants and all that for the following season if you know he's...
Not really. Not really. Because we still have to, go through the process. It's not like you can pick a coach today for a team next year. You don't know what happens during the course of the season. You don't know who's going to be available. There could be, anything can take place in the next 12 months. So, what we'll do is a year from now, we'll sit down and certainly we'll have more of a list than we had this year, because I always felt that he would come back this year. So we'll have a year to to think about it. So in that regard, it might be different. But there'll still be a process a year from now where you interview, talk to coaches, and make a decision.
What can be read into Brian's decision to come back for another year with the Phil's seeming to say this will be my last year?
Well, I've talked to Brian several times, and if you listen to some of his radio bites, he describes it pretty accurately. He just wasn't ready to make a decision on a time frame, that was imposed on him from another team. A year from now, would Brian be a candidate to coach this team? Absolutely. But other than that, there is nothing else to read into it.
You would not do what some college and pro teams have done and name the next coach a year or two in advance.
That's not something that we have interest in doing.
Have you opened negotiations with Derek at all?
I've been in contact with his representative, and we plan to meet shortly. It would not be today, no. And maybe over the weekend, maybe early next week. It's not. I don't believe it's something, that's as dynamic as some of the free agents that are out there today. Where they're, looking to make moves and make changes, and maybe don't have the faith in their organization. I think with Derek, we'll sit down and, I don't think he wants to go anywhere, and I don't think we want him to go anywhere. So there's a hope that you sit down and you work something out, and I believe that will happen.
Have you guys had any face-to-face time with any free agents that weren't on the team last season?
Any face-to-face time? We have not met with any prospective free agents other than those on our own team.
Has there been any offers made at all?
Wouldn't confirm or deny that.
How about Port's interest with Mike Miller? Is there anything that you can?
We would not comment on anybody that we may have contacted or did not contact. That's not how we do business.
You're mentioning Brian, just whenever that gets to that point that he would be a candidate, what kind of qualities would he bring to that?
That's not something that I want to expound on right now. It's kind of misleading. I think all of our assistant coaches are qualified to be head coaches. They're all at different stages in their lives, so I don't know, what they feel about opportunities, but I think they're all qualified, and we have a pretty good knowledge of coaches, out there that are head coaches and assistant coaches that would also be qualified. So we'll let the year play out, and we're happy to have Phil back.
Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done for you, but is there any sense of relief knowing that this part of it is done with Phil? And I mean, it's a pretty big.
Absolutely. Although I always felt there was a good chance, I would never put the percentage over 50-50. That's just how it is in this business. Until somebody makes a commitment or until they sign the agreement, you just never know. So to have our coach back, not just any coach, have Phil Jackson back and have his staff back, it's comforting to know that you don't have to go out on a coach's hunt and then not only find a head coach, but find a supporting staff that may affect not only the coaches, but trainers and conditioning coaches, etc. Because every coach has a feel for what they want to take place inside a locker room. So it's very comforting to know that won't have to take place.
The whole staff is back?
Excuse me?
The whole staff will be brought back?
Which staff?
Coaching staff.
Yes. Yeah, they have, as Brian Shaw made clear last night on a radio bite, they're not under contract right now, but we anticipate that they'll all be back.
You had mentioned that you did anticipate the roster with major changes. What constitutes major?
Well, I think, if we did not have Derek Fisher back next year, I think that would maybe be a major change, because he's a starter. I think that would be it. Changes to your starters and maybe your top 6-7 players.
But adding a mid-level player, something like that, adding to it doesn't necessarily mean in terms of those kinds of changes. You're still open to adding players to the roster.
Yes. Yeah, I think our core group would be considered a major component, and in this business, you can add a minimum salary player that if he doesn't fit in, it could create problems. So it's not just the money that determines, whether or not something's major or not. But I think if our core stays intact, anything beyond that, and maybe we're using the word major a little loosely, okay, but I think I'm comfortable with our core group. If we can bring Fish back and then fill out our roster with players, that would help the team in a supporting role, I think we'd be fine.
Mitch, you guys aren't one of the teams with all the salary cap space saved up, but have you felt that the last couple of days in free agency have been any more fervent than in other years because of all the players available?
Oh, it's compelling. It really is. It's you got the NBA channel on ESPN, and the bottom line's going through. You're always watching, and you're talking to other GMs and trying to figure out what's going to take place, and all the meetings, and GMs and owners flying to different cities. So I think it's compelling TV. It's great.
Is it kind of nice to not have to get in the middle of all that?
Very nice. We've been in the middle several times, and it's great to be on the outside looking in.
Did you send it? Everybody seems to be sending a pitch to Run. We sent one. Just to see. Did you guys even bother faxing anything to his office?
I think I answered that question, didn't I?
Major changes?
No, I said we wouldn't comment on who we contacted and who we haven't contacted.
Come on, show us your PowerPoint.
You got a sense that with just Phil deciding to come back, does that change in any way how you approach the rest of the free agents you have to deal with moving forward?
No, he's not one to profess that he has intimate knowledge of the college game and the players that are available in the draft and free agents. He's got an opinion on NBA players. But, as a coach, you're so into your team that maybe you don't spend as much time, on the other teams, other than when you're getting ready to play them. Certainly, that applies to the college game and free agency, especially with players that come back and forth from Europe. So he doesn't get too involved in those types of decisions. Every now and then, there's an NBA player we'll run past him and get his opinion. Especially, when there are changes and we talk about other issues. He'll ask me what's going on. How's this going? How are we going to work into our backcourt this year? How are we going to? We've got so many free agents. Other than that, he doesn't feel, that's a position that he wants to get in as a coach. Right. Get me the players. And if I like the players, I'd love to coach, and we want to win. If that changes down the road, then that impacts his decision to continue to coach. So I think we've done okay.
In terms of the selling point of just stability and that Phil's coming back, do you see that variable helping in any way?
I think one of the pluses with this organization, maybe the biggest plus, is that we've had stability, since Dr. Buss bought this team in the late 70s. I think that's a major plus, for free agents, for coaches, and for the fans of Los Angeles. It's huge. It can't be discounted.